Former president of the Nigerian Bar Association, Olisa Agbakoba, is calling for the privatization of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company, NNPC Limited, and a phased exit from joint venture and production sharing contract, PSC arrangements, with international oil companies to strengthen efficiency and transparency in the oil sector. The senior advocate of Nigeria also commended President Bola Ahmed Tinubu for signing Executive Order 9, mandating the direct remittance of oil and gas revenues to the Federation account, describing the move as a decisive step toward reclaiming Nigeria's fiscal sovereignty. Agbakoba, who made his remarks in a formal submission on behalf of OAL to the Implementation Committee, chaired by the Minister of Finance, Mr. Adebayo Olawale Edun, applauded the president for what he called a bold constitutional intervention. Joining us on the show to discuss his call for the privatization of NNPC, phased exit from IOCJV, is Olisa Agbakoba, a senior advocate of Nigeria. Good morning, Dr. Agbakoba. You're most welcome to the morning show.
Good morning, Ayo. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Good to see you.
Well, Dr. Agbakoba, you've been quoted as saying that the NNPC should be privatized. And I can understand that. The NNPCL is a registered going concern under the CAC. But it's at the same time the property of the federal government of Nigeria under Ministry of Finance Incorporated, MOFI, with the president as the Minister of Petroleum Resources. So there's really a contradiction there. But so how should that work? You have also said Section 162 contradicts the PIA. The same PIA that Nigeria struggled for 21 years and which was held. Is the main issue the contradiction with Section 162, or that there are other issues that other Nigerians are concerned about? Which one should have come first? Is it the executive order or a review of the PIA itself to satisfy other constituencies that maintain that they have a stake in some of those provisions? Those two questions.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you. I'll take this in from a big picture perspective. So the big picture is that I'm happy with what's happening at the CBN with Yemi Cardoso. Is steadying the monetary policy. They just reduced the MPC rates. But we could do better with our fiscal policy to be very aggressive. We should go from what we require as our public sector borrowing requirements to public sector funding requirements. So as you know, we're borrowing very heavily. So what I see government trying to do, finally, because I've been saying this for the last 20 years, what I see government starting to do is generating revenue and capital formation. So when you look at the PIA, generically, it's not a bad law. But the part that is of concern is that part where NNPC takes about 70% of the revenue we generate from oil. That's terrible. Section 162 clearly states that monies due to the Federation must be paid into the Federation account. But what's been happening is that the NNPC, when it was a statutory cooperation, would deduct 70%. And quite rightly, the president has passed the EO 9 to say you can't do that. So that has to go. So even though I have a bit of quarrel with the EO, because I'm not sure an EO, that's executive order, can override an act of parliament. So hopefully the Attorney General may be proceeding to court. Actually, I've written to him to say what would be best is to go to court to ask the court to expunge the offending parts of the PIA that gives PIA access to our funds. Now, we're going to be saving about 45 trillion if that happens. But I think that the executive order should have also looked at the international oil companies who fleece us by running our oil resources, depriving us of a huge, revenue source. Now, when that happens, we'll begin to expand our funding requirements. When we expand our funding requirements, we lower our borrowing requirements. Right now, we are borrowed to the extent of about 200 trillion. We want to lower that and raise capital formation. So I had proposed to President Tinubu 2 years ago 10 major sources of income. I proposed to Zach Adeleke, who is the chair of the NRS. I actually proposed the name NRS, but he's gone a bit of the way by modifying our tax laws. So now we are earning about 40 trillion from tax. But I need to see both the Nigerian president, the Attorney General, Zach, the Minister for Finance, pull together all of the potential sources of revenue. I'll just give you one. I wrote something about a month ago that property titling in Nigeria, that is the certificate of occupancies that you hold, 95% of Nigerian properties have no title. That means they're debt capital. Now, if we had to do a simple thing as titling properties, we'd be looking at 1.4 quadrillion over the next 10 years. If you break that down into yearly income, that's about 140 trillion. So when we do all of this, we are looking at close to 500 trillion. Remember, I suggested to you, gentlemen, a while ago, and you scoffed at it, that we could raise 500 trillion naira on a yearly basis if we plugged all the loopholes, modified our laws. What did Zach do? All he did was to modify the 90-30 base tax laws, and look what's happening today. So I have nothing against the PIA except the part that gives NNPC control over 70% of our oil resources.
All right. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Agbakoba. I want you to just address some of the things that you stated in that letter to Mr. Cardozo. You mentioned that the NNPCL remains an amorphous entity in your argument for the privatization of the NNPC, full privatization, whose precise role and legal character are still undefined. What are some of the things that you would like to make as recommendations in achieving this? I ask because you talk about the National Oil Company having no business with, there are certain functions that it should have no business doing. Can you expand on that this morning for us, please?
There's nothing to expand. There's nothing to expand. When the decision was taken to decorporatize the NNPC, it was made a limited liability company registered in CAC. That's what they did. But what the NNPC guys are doing is pushing back. So the government need not to do anything. In fact, President Tinubu has taken the correct decision by taking away a lot of their statutory functions and transferring it to the upstream and downstream commissions. Let NNPC go and get registered on the stock exchange and become like any other Nigerian oil company. Period. NNPC cannot be operator and regulator at the same time. So the PIA already recognizes that position. What hasn't happened is that the NNPC continues to accrue to itself statutory powers that it does not have under the law. So it's already a private company. It's just an illusion that it has, that it's still the old NNPC. So the NNPC is gone. Go and compete like all other Nigerian companies for whatever you want to do. And in that way, we will have a level playing field. We will separate policy from the operational people. So NNPC, in my view, under the PIA, is simply a private company.
Okay, so a couple of things. I get your point and I get your argument, but I also have disagreements with you, and I'm going to highlight them. And I'm happy you talked about debt capital. Before you started talking about debt capital, the first person...
No, before you start, let me just... Rufai, please. I'm not here to be cross-examined, okay? I'm not here to be... I don't accept what you want to do. I'm not going to answer any question that leads to... I'm not in a court. If you're asking questions out of what has been said, yes, but don't cross-examine me, please. I won't accept that. Just let me let you know.
I'm not cross-examining, and I'm shocked that you're saying this. I think we've enjoyed and we've shared a very rich relationship for you to have said that to me on air, sir. I'm not cross-examining you. I'm here just to ask a question and put clarity.
Cross-examination, I will not answer. All right, go on.
Okay.
If you ask me any questions that offend me, I won't answer.
Okay, so if you think it's cross-examination, I'll go ahead and do my job. Number one, sir, you talked about debt capital. Yes, I get your argument about debt capital. In fact, before you made the argument, people like Andrew Nevin have made the argument as regards debt capital, which is very valid, that we can unlock. But the part of the argument that we should also make is the government debt capital, which is about over 70 trillion, that they can wake up.
Yeah.
There are many moribund buildings here and there.
Yeah.
And take, for instance, look at the former, what's it called now? The former secretariat in Ikoyi here. God knows the dispute on that building, but it's just been there. And there are many of that sitting around. Secondly, for those that make arguments for the government and say, okay, things are weakening and all of that, the question I would also like to throw forward is, even when they get this revenue, they don't still put it to the good use of the people. And that's what I'm saying I'm going to raise. Look at the last budget cycle. It was shambles. With all they said they got as revenue, they couldn't fund healthcare. We're seeing 36 million when they were capable of over something billion. So when you even make the money in the first place, the government does not even put it to use in the end. And that's the mismatch I'm trying to talk about here.
I've lost you.
No, that's the mismatch I'm talking about, and that's what I want you to react to. Okay. On one part, you are making a strong point for the government, but when they even get the revenue, there's no revenue accountability. So it's not just making the revenue, but it's the revenue accountability. I mean, how would you explain that President Tinubu said last year, we've met our revenue targets, and in the end, you are seeing that they couldn't even fund the budget. They are moving into the next budget cycle. So what's the essence of making the revenue if we can use it for the people? That's the argument I'm trying to make.
Well, that's why I say it's a cross-examination, but I take your point. It's a cross-examination which you should be asking the president. I agree entirely with you that it's not enough to talk about raising revenue or capital formation, and then we say, where does it go? That's the key point, and I agree entirely that. But the first point, Rufai, and I still recognize you as my dear good friend, is we need to raise the revenue. That's the first thing. We need to stop PSBR. Public sector borrowing requirements is killing us. We need to go to PSFR, public sector funding requirements. So let's look for how to raise funds. I gave President Tinubu 10 ideas about how to look for money. It's not rocket science. That's the problem. It's not rocket science. The link between law and economics is called development law. And I'm proud to say I'm Nigeria's leading development law specialist. So when I see how fragile our economy is, in spite of plenty, it troubles me. But to your point, it's what we need to do to strengthen the anti-corruption agencies, EFCC, ICPC, the police, and all relevant agencies that deal with government revenue. Because the truth is, in spite of all the successes that Zach has achieved in tax and the new thing the president has achieved with oil sovereignty, people are not feeling it. That's the truth. It's not on the ground. It's not enough for the Bureau of Statistics to release numbers in Abuja. I ask my driver every day, how do you feel? And he said, I don't feel good. That's the key point. So the point you're making, Rufai, which is absolutely brilliant, is, all right, after we raise all this, does it hit the people? Does it touch them? So here's where I would, hope that our government, particularly as we're going to, 2027, and let the opposition stop crying. They are absolutely not doing their job. So APC is stealing their thunder. What we want to see next year is a campaign around poverty questions. Are the Nigerians getting a good deal? I don't think so. So where are the opposition people that can match President Tinubu? Because I want to see a very good fight next year over how Nigerians feel. But that's not to say that we shouldn't raise the funds. I would like to see us in a position to raise 500 trillion naira. Then the next thing will be, how do we allocate these resources to human development of Nigerians? So I entirely agree with your point about the need to have, guardrails around the issue of, accountability and transparency.
Okay, Dr. Agbakoba, we're talking about the executive order, the PIA, which there seems to be a consensus should be reviewed. But you use the phrase fiscal sovereignty. Now, can you help us explain that for the benefit of our viewers, fiscal sovereignty, and then link that to the demand by some other commentators that, in fact, what we need to review is the Petroleum Act of 1969, which some people are saying is the root of all this idea about the federal government saying all mineral deposits, everything, on the grounds of Nigeria and within the waters belong to the federal government of Nigeria in a federation.
Sure.
I think that's a bigger framework for the discussion.
Let's take it step by step. Right now, we have a situation where our oil is not benefiting us. That's number one. We also have a legal framework where under Section 44(3) of the Constitution, the government of Nigeria or of the Federation are owners or trustees on behalf of Nigerians of the oil resources. So let's deal with that question first. Are we getting a due fair share of the resources from our oil revenue? We are not. So let's claw that back first. Let's bring it back. That is what Executive Order 9 does. Having done that, we go to the second constitutional debate of what type of federation are we looking at? That's an issue that has been raised by Ken Saro-Wiwa all these years. Fiscal federalism. How do we allocate our resources? Should oil be something that will be outside of the exclusive legislative list and you put it in the concurrent or state list? That's a different argument, completely different argument. That's a constitutional argument. My argument today is a fiscal argument. We need money. If we need money, we've got to look at every avenue that we can draw in money. So right now, we have a centralized, centripetal federal government, which is really not a federation. When we first bring the money back into the federal purse, we can then have the conversation, and I hope President Tinubu will lead it, because in his manifesto, he did mention the need to have a restructured Nigeria. So I agree with you, Dr. Abati, that part of the problem really is, the bedrock of the problem is really the issue of the Petroleum Act of 1969. But that's a second step. The first step is let's bring our money back. Let me just quickly tell you that in the spectrum of fiscal revenue that the government can derive from crude oil, there are 34 value chains. We don't control a single one. I want to see the president enact Executive Order 10 to make shipping, banking, legal, and insurance. The revenues derived by the oil companies from this is over 100 trillion. No Nigerian carries any crude. We don't have a single Nigerian vessel owned by a Nigerian carrying our crude. It's all carried by Shell. Shell uses the bunga to offload all our oil into international waters. That's another area. So once we've brought our money in, let's lock it in first, and then we'll talk about how to distribute. So I agree with you. If you ask me personally, the federal government is too strong. We need to break it up. We need to transfer the 68 items of power in the exclusive list. We need to take some and give the states. And then from the states, we need to also give some to the local government. So you have three important and effective governments of Nigeria delivering something good to Nigerian people. So that's the way I see it.
And that would be a true federation.
And I hope that all this will be...
You hope that all this will be? No, please conclude your statement. You said you hope that all this will be... You were going to conclude your statement.
No. I was going to say, I hope... Yes, I was going to say that I hope these will be the big issues for 2027. It's not all this defection. People are defecting from one party to the other. I want to hear big issues. I'm not hearing them. And I'm sure Rufai will agree with me on that. Thank you.
Well, thank you so very much for your time with us today, Dr. Olisa Agbakoba, SAN.